now tuning into the Cancer-Free Economy Network, Petrochemicals, Cancer Alley, and Community Organizing webinar. Oh, we have one person using the chat. Please, if you're able to use the chat, we're building community here. This is what community looks like. We have people joining us from all over the country. This is going to be an amazing panel today. We have some amazing grassroots organizers that are going to be talking a lot about Cancer Alley, the tough battles that they face in their areas, and we're so glad to have you. So thank you all for attending. Once again, we're thrilled to have you all. And the aim of this webinar is to delve into the intersection of petrochemicals and cancer, examining the industry's impact on Cancer Alley, and highlighting the environmental justice community organizing efforts driving transformative change. On today's agenda, we'll be having a presentation, and we're going to get into that in a second. And this is going to be about the communities living along the Mississippi River, between areas like New Orleans, St. James, St. John, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and those who are faced with high density of mostly petrochemical industrial facilities, including oil refineries, plastics, manufacturers, chemical plants, and other. This area is what we call Cancer Alley. And so today we're going to be hosting this webinar to basically build a movement. How do we create safe and healthy places for our environments, free of toxic chemicals, free of chemicals in our water, food, our air, the products that we eat, etc. And we're really going to get into the marginalized communities. Next slide, please. So who is going to be talking today? Let's get into it. I'm Katora Butler-Reed, of course, and so I am the Cancer-Free Economy Network, one of the Building Power co-leads, and alongside me, we have a couple of other people here, Kayla, Melissa, Ivana, Kareem, and they're going to be in the chat as well. They're dropping in the chat. So I guess attendees might not be able to comment to us. But if you have any specific questions, please message Ivana or Kareem or Melissa or myself if I'm able to look into it. So once again, so I will be the moderator for today. We have joining us Shamel Levine, the Chief Operating Officer at Rise St. James, Louisiana. We have Mr. Robert Taylor. I know he was having some technical difficulties, so hopefully he's able to join in. But we do have his daughter, Miss Tish Taylor, the program manager of the Concerned Citizens of St. John. And we have Maria Harmon, the co-director and co-founder of Step Up Louisiana. Now, I want to bring up Melissa Gonzalez, who's going to talk a little bit more about just some background so we can kind of get a real clear understanding before we get into the deep diving questions of our panelists. Melissa?
Thank you, Ketura. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Programs and Impact at Latinas Contra Cancer. We are based in San Jose, California, and I'm also part of the Emerging Leaders cohort at the Cancer-Free Economy. So today, as Ketura mentioned, we want to bring you attention to a tragic environmental injustice occurring in the heart of Louisiana. It is a story of communities living on the front lines of industrial pollution, forced to bear the devastating health consequence. Along an 85-mile stretch between New Orleans and Baton Rouge lies a corridor known as Cancer Alley. This region hugs the banks of the Mississippi River and is home to over 200 fossil fuel and petrochemicals operations. A quick definition about what petrochemicals are. Petrochemicals are chemicals originated from the fossil fuels. So these petrochemicals plants take fossil fuel byproducts and convert them into compounds used for plastic, rubber, fertilizer, pesticides, and more. While we all use these products daily, their production comes at severe cost to the local communities. So the residents of Cancer Alley, many are low income and minority, face alarming rates of cancer, respiratory diseases, and other illnesses linked to the toxic emission from these facilities. So the neighborhoods have become sacrifice zone for this type of industry. With few economy alternatives, many have little choice but to work at these plants that poison their air and the water. It is a vicious cycle of injustice, forcing the whole community to trade their health for employment. So here are some statistics about the community. So the statistics here are pretty devastating. Over 180 petrochemicals facilities line the banks of the Mississippi River, and a full 66% of Louisiana reported annual greenhouse emission come from just 150 of these industrial facilities. So you can imagine the huge impact. From 2016 to 2021 alone, they released a horrifying 522 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent to 140 coal-fired power plants. So part of the Cancer Alley face the highest cancer risk from air pollution anywhere in the United States. In some areas, an alarming 27% of babies are born underweight. Preterm births reach levels of 25.3%, which is nearly 2.5 times higher than the rest of the country. There is also severe respiratory issues like chronic asthma, bronchitis, sinus infections, and childhood asthma are common through these communities. So these communities deserve a clean air and clean water. And today we bring you experts, advocates to tell you more about their work and the impact in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate that. These are definitely some devastating statistics. So let's really dive in. Let's get into it, y'all. Y'all are in for a treat. We have some amazing organizers, and let's go ahead. You know what? Let's go ahead and start with Shamel. So Shamel Levine, Chief Operating Officer for Rise St. James, Louisiana, received her BS and master's degrees from Southern University and A&M College. She has over 20 years of experience in public health, specifically in the HIV field, having worked as a program director of a local nonprofit providing programs for people disproportionately impacted by HIV and AIDS. Ms. Levine served as the program administrator for the city of Baton Rouge's Ryan White's program for 5.5 years. In her most recent role, Ms. Levine served as executive program manager for the City of Baton Rouge's Division of Human Development and Services. In September 22, Shamel resigned from the City of Baton Rouge to join Rise St. James, Louisiana, which we appreciate. Sorry, Baton Rouge, but we needed her at Rise St. James in this full time, and served as the Chief Operating Officer. Rise St. James was founded in 2018 by Shamel's mother, Goldman Environmental Prize winner Sharon Levine, to stop Formosa plastics from being built in St. James Parish. Since 2018, Shamel has supported Rise St. James efforts by speaking at events, panel discussions, and marching alongside her mother and other Rise St. James members and partners. So, and before I get into some of the questions, attendees, you are welcome to do questions for the Q&A later, so you can kind of just go ahead and message those already, and we can get to those a little bit later. If there's just a question you kind of have to now so you don't forget, then that is an option. So you can do that using our Q&A filter, Q&A feature at the bottom. So, Shamel, I have to ask, Rise St. James has been a leading organization in Cancer Alley, and it's gotten a lot of attention specifically because of the legal battle with Formosa. Can you share what it took to even get to that point where there had to be a lawsuit, and what kind of wins came out of it? Because a lot of times, especially in areas like Louisiana, we don't know what a win is, or, you know, we can't quite conceptualize what that looks like. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Couture, thank you so much for having me and that awesome introduction. So, of course, like you said, Rise St. James was founded by my mom in 2018, specifically to stop Formosa Plastics. Formosa Plastics at the time was a $9.4 billion plastics plant that wanted to build my mom's home, our family.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
And so, like I said, it was founded by my mom to stop Formosa Plastics. And Formosa Plastics' original air permit, stated that they wanted to emit 7.7 tons of ethylene oxide into the air, into our waterways. And so, as we know, as what we've learned is that ethylene oxide is extremely cancer causing. It can cause leukemia, breast cancer, and other forms of cancer. And in addition to that, they wanted to emit benzene and some other carcinogenic chemicals, as well as greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. And so it's been a battle since 2018. Our parish council, which is our local governing body, basically voted, even our local councilman in the district where Formosa wants to build, voted for Formosa. And so early on, our Governor John Bell Edwards at the time, he was all for Formosa Plastics being built near a predominantly Black community. There's also an elementary school that is located less than a mile away from where Formosa is proposing to build on 2,400 acres of land. There's also, what we found out, there's also burials of enslaved people who are our descendants, our ancestors. We are descendants of the people who are buried on. There's 3 different burials on 24 acres of land, 2,400 acres of land. And so first we tried to stop the parish council from approving Formosa. Like I said, they did not. They, went forward and greenlit, basically stating that Formosa was going to bring hundreds of jobs to the community, which we know historically that does not happen. A lot of the chemical industries, they hire people from other communities or from out of state, actually. And so a lot of our residents don't get those jobs. So, we knew that couldn't be the basis for Formosa Plastics coming. And so from there, we sued. We got with Earth Justice, Tulane Environmental Law Clinic, and we sued. We sued the state, Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. And then Formosa was allowed to join in on that lawsuit. And so in September of 2022, the 19th JDC in Baton Rouge ruled in our favor and vacated all of Formosa's air permits. And so we were overjoyed, just excited, and of course, LDQ and Formosa appealed. First Circuit in Louisiana overturned the lower court's decision to vacate all of Formosa's air permits, and they reinstated Formosa's air permits. And so now we're taking it to the Supreme Court in Louisiana and asking that the Supreme Court restore the lower court's decision to vacate all of Formosa's air permits. And then all is not lost. We're also fighting at the federal level. We were able to get the Army Corps of Engineers to suspend Formosa's wetlands permit. So they're also going to need permits to build or access the wetlands that fall behind those 2,400 acres of land. And so right now we have a petition out where we're asking President Biden to instruct the Army Corps of Engineers to revoke Formosa's wetland permit. And so I don't know if we can put that link in the chat now if we wanted to wait later, but we do want folks to sign on to that petition. In addition to Formosa Plastics, we're fighting, as Marissa said earlier, there's over 180 petrochemical industries between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, which is that 85-mile stretch. And so we're fighting multiple projects. There's at least 10 that we're actively fighting right now. One is DG Fuse that wants to build in the 5th District of St. James And I would be remiss to say that there are 12 industries, petrochemical industries in the 5th District of St. James, within a 10-mile radius. So if you put that into context, we're overburdened. We're overburdened in St. James, in Ascension Parish. A report just was released by Johns Hopkins that shows that ethylene oxide is 9 times higher than what LDQ and the plants in Ascension Parish have reported. And we know, like I said earlier, ethylene oxide is highly carcinogenic. And so we're definitely overburdened. And like I said, there's DG Fuels we're trying to stop. There's also Air Products that's trying to build in a neighboring parish, Ascension Parish, that's already overburdened with ethylene oxide. And so we have another petition where we're trying to get public officials to stop Air Products and DG Fuels from being built. So that's a separate petition. We're also fighting with the financiers of the petrochemical industries, specifically trying to stop Citibank from financing Formosa Plastics as well. So there's a petition, an active petition for that, for people to sign on to. We're basically asking Citibank to divest, defund, and denounce Formosa Plastics. And so, that's just 4 plants right now, but I can go on and on, but I know I need to give. There's so many projects.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shamel, for sharing that, because I think it's a true testament to organizing. What does it look like? It's it's really a marathon. That's really what it is. And people, and it's like, I'm glad that you also mentioned those time frames, because some people think, oh, we did this, now it's done. But it's like, no, we have way more work to do. And what we seek to happen, it might take some time. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna go ahead and I want to shift to I'll shift to the concerned citizens of St. John. I hope Mr. Taylor was able to join. I know he was having some technical difficulties. So right now, if he's on, somebody let me know. But I'm still gonna lift him up in this space and give some background, because it's very important to know the leaders that we have in the field doing the work. And I'm also gonna bring up Ms. Taylor as well. So Mr. Robert, aka Bobby Taylor, is a native of Reserve, Louisiana. He is the founder and executive director of the Concerned Citizens of St. John Incorporated. In 2016, EPA came to Reserve to warn his community that they had the highest risk of cancer in the USA due to emissions of chloroprene and DuPont and Danka. Bobby reflected on all the deaths and illnesses that his family and neighbors had been afflicted with and decided to advocate for the lives of his community. This small group of red shirt wearing concerned citizens have made a great difference in St. John the Baptist Parish and brought the worldwide attention to Cancer Alley and environmental racism. EPA Administrator Reagan has visited and walked through this community twice. Mr. Taylor has shared his story of environmental racism while traveling with the Poor People's Campaign before CERD, the Committee of the United Nations, and to the environmental justice leaders in Japan. He has recently spoken at Administrator Reagan's official signing of the HON rule in Washington, D.C. This new rule has set precedents for regulating toxic industrial emissions along Cancer Alley. And now we also have Ms. Tish Taylor. She is a lifelong resident of St. John Parish. She has worked on affordable housing and financial literacy programs and as a construction coordinator building single-family homes through the USDA Rural Development Mutual Self-Help Program. She is a mother and grandmother who has always worked closely with her community. Tish joined the Concerned Citizens of St. John in 2017 and has shared the story of Cancer Alley and the toxic emissions of the children of the 5th Ward Elementary School that are breathing from the state capitol to the United Nations Committee in Geneva, Switzerland. So, when I tell you it made it all the way to the United Nations, that is how real the work that we're talking about in Cancer Alley is. So Tish, I have to ask you, I'm not sure if Mr. Taylor has been able to join, but I'll go ahead and yield this question to you. Concerned Citizens of St. John has advocated so far as the United Nations being featured in the PBS birth weight maternal health documentary, focusing on chlorophene and other toxins. What are the actual health effects in plain language for people to truly understand how much of a threat these petrochemical plants are in Black communities?
Thank you for having me here. Cancer, kidney disease, chloroprene itself is a mutagen. It actually connects to your DNA and alters it. So that means that you may have a minor trait in your body of something that may never manifest ever for generations and generations. But what chloroprene does, it metastasizes that. So it compromises our immune system and shows up in so many different ways when it comes to our community. So I see people with a lot of autoimmune diseases, um, diabetes and lupus and sickle cell anemia. People are dying from those at a younger age where they may have longer survival rates. In St. John Parish, they do not. We had the highest death rate per capita in the United States of COVID when COVID first started for the first 3 months. And that's because our immune systems are compromised. We are more we're just more exposed to so many other things that we can't help but have really strange diseases. My sister's diagnosed with a very rare autoimmune disease that was diagnosed as gastroparesis at first, which is a stomach paralysis. But with further studying, they found that she had this really rare 5 name, none of them in anywhere that I can break down into normal words, autoimmune disease. You know, my brother moved to California and stayed out there for like 20 years. He moved back home. Within a year of being back home, he had a heart attack at maybe 50 years old. A year later, he had a second heart attack and was diagnosed with full-blown diabetes. None of that runs in our family. No issues. He had no issues prior. While he was living in California and LA, he was fine. Our community suffered from eczema, asthma. We had the highest asthma rates in the state, the top 3 in the United States. High asthma hospitalizations and emergency room visits. It's just a plethora all across the board. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. She's a breast cancer survivor. And then later she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She's showing signs of dementia right now. My dad's actually in Anaheim at the hospital with my mom. That's why he's having some connectivity issues with getting on because she's been in the hospital for a week now. To the point where we have to feel like we need to move our families away, the most vulnerable. My sister doesn't live in Reserve or LaPlace anymore. She lives in New Orleans. My mom moved to Anaheim. The more we found out about the poison and how much we were exposed to, it was important to try to at least help the ones that were more vulnerable to get away from the emissions until hopefully we can make a difference and lower them.
My goodness. First, of course, just sending love, to you and your family in this time. But I can't help but even get emotional myself, like even, living in Baton Rouge and understanding what it does to us, like from a health standpoint. But I think it's important because we look at all this language and we're like, what does that mean? Like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. I don't really know what that means, but I know that, even when we went to at my time at BVM, we went to, I think one of our first stops was in St. John. We worked with St. James, etc. And one of the areas that we were in, it was like a center for like senior citizens and whatnot. And like everybody in there was like, yeah, either they had cancer themselves or just about maybe 2 to 3 people in their family had cancer or had all these different health concerns. So I just thank you so much for putting it in perspective like what it really means. It's not just cancer, but it has so many other, you know, impacts, and it just.
And when I explain the neighborhood, I mean every neighbor in my neighborhood, every house, you know, and there's someone who has either survived it or passed away from it, fighting it at this time. And every day we wonder if we're next. When is my next doctor's visit gonna give me bad news? And that's the way we live in Cancer Alley.
That's the way we live. And that's why it's so important that, you know, we really rally behind organizations like you and the other panelists that we have to really lift this up. Thank you so much, Ms. Tish. And I'm going to come back to, you know, you both a little bit later. And now I'm going to go ahead and shift to Maria. So, Miss Maria Harmon is from Lake Charles, Louisiana. She has been organizing since the age of 16 with the Junior Daughters of the Knights of Peter Claver. And Maria has a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's degree in political science from the Southern University A&M College. Okay, we got a lot of HBCUs in the building of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. During her time at Southern, Maria built a network of over 2,000 students to become civically engaged while working for the Louisiana Democratic Party as a campus organizer. She has worked on many political campaigns ranging from local judge races to state legislative and U.S. statewide senatorial races.
What's going on?
Uh-oh. Ms. Tish, you're still on. We gone. If you can mute. Thank you. Where were we? Yes, Maria. She spent much of her time educating the youth on the importance of voting and encouraging them to turn out the vote. After her tenure at the Louisiana Democratic Party, Maria helped starting up the Democracy Prep Public School of Baton Rouge as a community organizer by helping to enroll 192 students from their first academic school year from 2015 to 2016. She has worked for the MICA Project, a federation of faith in action, in 2015 as a community organizer working in education, justice, and civic engagement. Maria is now the co-founder and co-director of Step Up Louisiana / Step Up for Action, a grassroots membership-based organization that advocates for economic and education justice across the state of Louisiana since 2017. AKA, she is not a rookie, she is a vet in these organizing streets. So, Maria, you are a co-director of a pretty large organization that is constantly organizing around the issues on the ground, locally and statewide, nationwide, all over the place. And one of my fondest memories was this time we joined you all for one of the candidate forums that you had. And y'all was asking some heavy hitting questions about environmental injustice. And it's really nothing like I had really seen in the voting rights space. Can you shed a little more light as to what accountability looks like for elected officials?
Yes, first I want to say accountability is not an attack. Accountability, sometimes that's the reaction we get, but it's not an attack whatsoever. It's really asking the hard questions, and getting and seeking the answers that we need. And I'm so proud of the organization that we've been able to build over the past 7 years. We have up to 500 members across New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Jefferson Parish, and also throughout the state. But those 3 areas are where we have membership chapters. And in Baton Rouge is where climate justice has really emerged as a critical issue. And of course, both chapters in Jefferson Parish and New Orleans as well. But in Baton Rouge, we're in pathway of Cancer Alley. And there's other pressing issues like the Ronaldson landfill that's located in North Baton Rouge that has a small community of people impacted as well. And for me, as a Black girl growing up in Southwest Louisiana around Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish, it's sad to see that the faces of those most impacted by environmental injustice in Louisiana are Black and brown people. And I honestly feel like that is definitely intentional in a sense of choosing areas to locate and occupy to develop these major corporations that pollute the air for so many people that live there and the land as well. But accountability for us is organizing ourselves to ask the critical questions, to create space where we actually call in decision makers and we proposition them on making shifts and changes that will increase our quality of life in a positive direction. One thing I've seen growing up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and more specifically Mossville, is an area that was gravely impacted by a plant company called Condia Vista that located itself in 1960. And which is why I'm so passionate about politics and the importance of voting. My grandfather, Wesley Montgomery Sr., he was an old school organizer back then in Mossville, but him and other community leaders made efforts to try to create their own politics in Mossville because it was an independent community, unincorporated, but everyone there owned their homes. They lived off the land that they had property. Just about any vegetation that they ate, they grew it. They had gardens, they had pond. People, whatever seafood they had, most likely they caught the fish around the area. So whenever you impact an area where you have people that are self-sustaining and living off the land like that, it is a form of genocide. That is a form of terrorism. And what makes it even, I guess, piercing for me in the heart when I think about it is the efforts that were made by people to create their own town, to have their own politics, where they could have their own decisions. But I feel like thinking back on it, they probably blocked it because you had nothing but Black people living there that owned their home, which means they also had a tax base, and they also had entrepreneurs who hired other people. So they had their own economy in a sense too. They would have been giving us too much power. White supremacy is real. And I feel like on a systemic end, that's how we were disserviced because there was nobody there to speak up for the citizens of Mossville when they had to make a decision of where they were going to dump whatever waste into the water systems. And Sulphur, which was a neighboring town in Westlake, they had their own politicians there to make decisions, but there was nobody there to really speak in favor of Mossville. And when I see other towns neighboring, like further east throughout the state, around St. James and St. John and the River Parishes it's just a correlating story, I think, complete disenfranchisement. And just reflecting back on that story in Mossville, though, what would have happened if we would have had our own politicians to speak up for us? And which is why I feel like I'm compelled to be in this fight, because I'm still carrying a legacy. I'm carrying the torch for us to fight for progression and liberation. And accountability is a major piece. We've held politicians accountable in other pressing ways. In 2018, we had the Poor People's Campaign. And Step Up was one of the anchoring organizations there. And that was the first time I actually risked arrest and contributed to escalating, the pressure on politicians, because around that time, the state legislature was meeting. We had about 6 weeks worth of actions. Every Monday, we had an action at the Capitol. And what happened is that last Monday, I decided the whole time I was served on the green team. I was like, I'll keep putting pressure, but I'm not gonna get arrested. And I seen how people started getting citations from the state Capitol Police. And I said, okay, I'm gonna risk arrest this time because I know they're not gonna take us to jail. So the time they decided to up the ante on us. They actually took us to jail. But in that moment, I seen what it was like to actually put ourselves on the line and how that action escalated things. It had the legislators like, okay, they have eyes on us. And I'll never forget that following week after we came back and everybody was released from prison that evening at EBR Parish Prison. they met with us the following week, the people that was in John Bell Edwards' cabinet in his administration. And we met in the chapel of the state capitol. And those people apologized to us. They realized that they were actually in alignment of what we want to do. John Bell Edwards realized that it wasn't a good look of what happened. And we clearly were operating our civil rights to hold people accountable. And the whole premise of it was for them to pass a moral budget. They had a lot of things on the chopping block that year. Of course, they're constantly giving tax breaks to these industrial corporations who always, I call it corporate welfare, when they get a pass to not have to pay taxes, property taxes. And what happened is okay, I need to wrap up a bit. But what happened is they realized that it was a buildup of a moment there where all eyes were on them. It was either you atone for what you're going to do that's right by the people, or you're going to continue on with this oppressive form of leadership that's constantly disenfranchising people. And we seen a shift in that moment. We put enough pressure for them to pass a more budget that was more adequate. Another time is back in 2022, we saw a return of that yielded a win. We risked arrest in DC. We put pressure on the US Senate. And that was a time for them to pretty much put a limit on permits for producing hydrogen. That would have impacted Louisiana gravely. Because again, we are ground zero when it comes to industrial production. But we put pressure on Senator Manchin. They stopped the permitting bill from happening. And of course, this is one battle of many. It's a war that we're in, but accountability is critical to this movement.
Yes, thank you so much, Maria. Something I was just thinking about when you said that, I'm like, look, pressure either gonna burst pipes or it's gonna make diamonds. The choice is ours. So if I could have all of the panelists come off screen so we can ask some collective questions. This is gonna require all of you. We need all hands on deck for some of this work. Well, all of the work, we need to be working together, which many of us have already done so. So that's the beautiful part, and what really community looks like. So let's address the elephant in the room. The communities that we're talking about are Black people. The areas are Black and brown people daring to resist and, more importantly, survive in these conditions. So what does zoning have to do with this conversation? I kind of want to start with Shamel a little bit, because you all had a lawsuit, and if I'm not mistaken, it was in comparison to what they call maybe a racial cleansing. And then, so what does zoning look like in our areas where, like Maria said, this is genocide? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. And I totally agree with Maria. I've been saying it since probably 2018 that this is a genocide. It's a slow genocide nonetheless, but it's happening throughout the River Parishes and also in Lake Charles, which I share relatives out in the Lake Charles area as well, Maria, and I'm very familiar with Mossville. And we're fighting in the River Parishes in the 5th District to make sure that the 5th District of St. James is not wiped out. But to put it into some, give you some historical context, our parish council in 2014 rezoned the area of the 5th District as residential / future industrial. In 2014, they commissioned a committee, and some of the committee members who were Black voted to convert it to future industrial, not realizing exactly what that means. Because if you think about it, like when the first plants entered St. James in the 1960s, people didn't know about the harms of these chemicals and what these chemicals meant. Like, people were told that what's being emitted out of the smokestacks was just mist. And so people didn't know. And so I don't think that the members on the committee really knew what they were doing when they voted to move it to industrial. And so in 2018, 2019, our council member pushed to, because there was, let me back up, there was also South Louisiana Methanol was also trying to build a massive complex around our only park in the 5th District, where children play, where the senior citizens go to do, their daily activities. And there was, to walk around the park and different activities. They were really considering building a methanol plant right next door. And so we got it changed, where it went back from future industrial to residential. But there are still some parts, like where Formosa is, that's still zone industrial. And so, but other parts of St. James, they're still residential. The predominantly white districts are residential. And so what we've seen is that the 5th District on the west bank of the Mississippi River is, some parts are industrial, and then also on the east bank, right across the river from the 5th District in the 4th District, is predominantly Black. And so it's clear that this is environmental racism that's happening in St. James, in Ascension Parish, in St. John. They're not going to put these petrochemical plants in predominantly white districts. And I also want to say that we also have what is considered moving from plantations to plants. Everywhere throughout the River Parishes where there was a plantation, a slave plantation, there are now petrochemical industries. It is so bad where there are cemeteries where there were Black communities that were forced out. There are cemeteries that are surrounded by plants. In some cases, even like I said earlier, on the Formosa site, there are 3 burial grounds. There's a mosaic fertilizer plant that's next door to where Formosa wants to build. We just learned that there's a slave burial ground they built a waste pond on top of. And so it's the further desecration of the graves of our ancestors. That's preservation. We're fighting to make sure that the burials are preserved, but we're also trying to make sure that we're not wiped off of the planet. And it's not happening. It's been white flight basically. And this was years in the making. When we talk about the long game, white families, the white landowners, the descendants of the slave owners, they sold their land to petrochemical industries. And so some of them have been allowed to live out their lives on this land that's already sold. We don't know. We don't know until after the plants start announcing or submitting permit requests to LDQ that this land has been sold. And then we're already operating in the dark or from behind, so many things behind, when they don't even give us an opportunity to even buy the land.
And when you say that, when I think about our ancestors, it's just that the continuation of the battles that we've had to fight all the way back to, your ancestors, and that connection. Maria, did you want to add anything quickly? And we only have, y'all, we getting into it, but we gotta keep the answers a little more concise. But it's all right, because it's so good. I don't want to cut nobody off, but hey, I'm gonna have to let y'all know, But Maria, do you want to touch on that before I get to the next question real quickly?
Yes, I just wanted to be sure about the question again, the point.
Zoning. Oh, no, it's okay.
Thank you for that with the zoning.
What that has to do, like, how has that impacted Cancer Alley?
It has impacted it greatly. We're talking about the framers who allow people to come and occupy land to build up an institution. And for me, when I think about it, I feel like the people that sit on these commissions, or when it was an appointed commission, I'm glad John Bell Edwards made an executive order to give decisions to school boards and Metro Council, City Council people, and the sheriff boards for more democracy to be made in a decision when it was time to make a decision or approve or denial of an industrial tax exemption program application from some plant companies. And again, we have to look at where we are having schools, where we're having certain residential spaces, and where we're having plant companies located. If you look at any area that is low income or is predominantly Black, they have neighboring plant companies, and then their neighborhood school is around that as well. So for us at Step Up Louisiana, we look at climate justice from an intersectional standpoint as well, and how schools and jobs are impacted. And it also speaks to the quality of health, the health impacts that people have. And when you see that where the zoning is happening, where you have a lack of hospitals, but you have a lot of plant companies and homes, that's an issue. And I'm pretty sure the lifespan is shortened, the birth mortality rate is heightened, and all of these things connect. But I'm saying this for people to really see how zoning can play a part in a domino effect of painting the larger picture of our own lived experiences.
Okay. We're gonna bring Tish in there real quick. Cap us off, cap us off.
All right. So real quick, the issue is even more because this is so deviantly done that when they started zoning, okay, so we went from plants and it was more agricultural, of course, lands, and we were sharecroppers. So we were able to purchase land. All of a sudden, we were like, we can actually have the American dream. We can purchase this land along the river. It's the best land, without the idea of understanding that they were giving us the land because of what Shamel said, white flight. They knew what was coming. They knew that whatever a plant was going to be zoned industrial, that they would give this all options, no tax, no property taxes and everything to bring these things into our communities. And then they redlined us, so, we didn't have the option of moving anywhere else. We had no idea what was coming, and we bought this land thinking that this was going to be wonderful. And in essence, they held us captive and put us right there still where the poison was. So that is genocide. That is genocide. A sacrifice zone was created, and they said, we're going to get them here, we're going to keep them here for generations, and we're going to slowly poison this community. And that's where we are now.
Woo! The way y'all just broke that down was revolutionary, because we got to be mindful of even the words that we use. Is genocide. They redlined us and we have nowhere else to go. What do we do? And they're killing us as they've, woo. Okay, I don't even, woo. Okay, y'all do it.
It's hard to even build generational wealth. Like my family's land has been in our family for 5 generations. And so it's like the value of our land is not worth what it was worth years ago. Like my mom's home has decreased in value by $100,000. And so it's like, who is she going to sell her house to now? Nobody's going to buy a house next to a chemical plant.
Nobody. And we're forced to live in these areas. Thank y'all for breaking that down, because I know I'm even seeing some of the people who are joining, and a lot of them don't live in Louisiana. They never been to St. John, never heard of St. James, never, so this doesn't even make any sense to a lot of people. So thank y'all for sharing. So I just want to remind people, there is the Q&A section, and I think we might have an opportunity to get to some of those questions. So I'm gonna try to hurry up. Let's try to round robin. I have one last question for you all before I get to Q&A. So let's look, y'all, please, let's try to keep it in. But if the spirit moves you, I'm not going to deny the spirit. All right. So considering the influence of powerful and just these elected officials like our governor, Jeff Landry, the large plants like Formosa, the Exxons of the world, what have been some personal attacks to you or your organization that maybe you've had like some kind of experience with, and how do you combat those attacks? And that's open to anybody. Ms.
Okay,
Tish?
I'll start with that one. Well, my dad's not here to tell you about how when we first started, it was in 2016. So he was really pumped up. And the first thing on our agenda was the children at Fifth Ward, which if you drew a straight line from Fifth Ward to Dinka was 450 feet from Dinka. And this is a historically Black elementary school. It was my parents' high school, my junior high, and now it's elementary from K to fourth grade. when they're most vulnerable. So we went to the school board with all of the emissions information about Dinka and all of this information. And at that school board meeting, Chuck Carr Brown was there, and he was the secretary of of Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, Chuck Carr Brown, LDEQ. And he stood up and he pointed at the little red shirt people and he said, don't listen to them. They are fear mongers. Pointed at my dad and said he was a fear monger disseminating mistruths that emissions that we were actually giving them, which was from the EPA website, downloaded from Dinka, that we are not in that much danger. So did the Department of Health, Louisiana Department of Health. They came and they said, it didn't matter where the school was, the children were still in danger, so it didn't make sense to move the children. They downplayed everything, but we became the enemy of Fifth Ward Elementary. Instead of us trying to protect the school, the narrative was changed from, we're not trying to protect them from toxins, but we're trying to shut down a school. And I'm like, we're trying to save the children's lives. But the narrative in this parish still is that we're the enemy of Fifth Ward Elementary.
See, that's what really bothers me, because truth, you just don't even know what kind of enemies you'll even attract with the truth. And so that's why we have to rally behind organizations like you all, because you all are literally just trying to save the babies' lives, just trying to save the babies. And now y'all are public enemy number one. Thank you so much for sharing, Tish. And we're gonna get into how people can support you all a little bit later. I saw some questions in the chat. So and then anybody else want to share? Maybe Maria or Shamel?
Yeah, well, I can share. Like, I haven't had any personal attacks. Like, nobody hasn't gotten in my face. But Rise as a whole, we've been attacked in terms of people saying that we're trying to stop jobs. We don't want we're standing in the way of progress. We've received attacks online recently when we released information on the Orange Grove plantation where Air Products is trying to build and then run a carbon capture pipeline through 4 parishes. So we've heard things like, go back to Africa. If it wasn't for the plants, y'all would be in the field still. And then most recently, my mom, that we received some attacks on social media where people were saying that, my mom doesn't say anything about my dad working in industry when we were growing up. And so it's those type of attacks that we get, and we basically try to counteract it with, we're not against jobs. We want good jobs. We want jobs that don't harm the workers or the residents that live nearby. We want green jobs. So I wouldn't say it's been in our face, but there have been times that we felt like my mom may need more security because she's the face of Rise, and she travels a lot.
It's a lot. My dad had a reporter, and he would drive anyone who would listen. He would drive over to Fifth Ward Elementary and show them where Dinka was in relation to Fifth Ward. So he drives along Fifth Ward, and I have this climate car that was donated from another organization, and it's got climate action now, fingerprints. It's got a big windmill on it, so it's really like environmental hippie kind of like. And one of the teachers at Fifth Ward Elementary, the kids were outside in the playground, and the teacher screamed, "Terrorist," grabbed all the children and dragged them into the school and called the principal. Security came out wanting to know what my dad was doing out. He was like, "Terrorist? Trying to save y'all, and you actually calling me a terrorist." So it's so important that we change that narrative, and we've done things to build a relationship with Fifth Ward Elementary for them to understand what's going on. But it's been so tainted that they want their school, even if that means that they're under, in the worst place ever to live. And I want to add to that, Black children are actually bused to Fifth Ward Elementary from more prominent neighborhoods on the northeast southeastern part of St. John Parish. So we have people that actually live in LaPlace, north of Airline Highway, who have elementary schools within 2 miles, 1 to 2 miles from their homes, but their children are bused to Reserve in Cancer
Wow.
Alley, in the worst parts of Cancer Alley, Black children.
And I've actually even seen we did a tour as well, but where I was able to see, and it was crazy because I'm like, literally, I'm looking at these plants literally in somebody's backyard. I'm talking about St. Rose, I'm talking about St. John, St. James, all of these areas, and it's just like plant after plant after plant after plant after plant. And I'm just like, I can't even imagine, even when I was with BVM and we had people coming in from across the country in the organization, there are people who went home sick, like literally people who had headaches, people who were nauseous, etc., because they had never even experienced anything like that. So unfortunately, the conversation is coming to an end. But I want for, those who are attending, if you all have some questions, we do have a moment. We have about 15 minutes that we're going to stay after, in about 2 minutes or so. We have 15 more minutes for some of the additional questions that you all have, because we do want to answer those. But for those who are going to be leaving us, I want to allow the panelists to kind of just tell us a little bit about what's coming next. How do we rally around you all? What do we follow? Is it Instagram, social media? How can we engage with some of these campaigns that you all have, these national campaigns and petitions? And we'll be sure to send a resource guide to everybody that has registered as well. So I'm going to, we can start with Rise, then Concerned Citizens, and then Step Up, and then I'm going to bring up someone to close from Cancer Free Economy Network. Go ahead, Shamel.
I'm sorry. I think I'm supposed to amplify our petitions at this point.
Yes.
And they should be in the chat right now. So there's the petition where we're asking President Biden to instruct the Army Corps of Engineers to revoke Formosa Plastics wetland permits. So if you can please sign on to that, we would greatly appreciate that. There's also the DG Fuels Air Products. Those are two different facilities that are trying to locate. One is trying to locate in Ascension Parish, which is north of St. James, and the other one is trying to locate in St. James Parish in the 5th District, in between two predominantly Black communities, historical communities. And so we're trying to stop those two plants. And then there's also the Citibank petition. We would love everybody to sign on to that one. We're asking Citibank to defund, divest, and denounce Formosa Plastics, and also ask people to consider withdrawing their money from Citibank, and not getting credit cards through Citibank, because they are financing these petrochemical industries. It's not just Citibank. It's Chase Bank. Those are like the largest, Goldman Sachs. Those are the large financiers of the petrochemical industry, and we have to stop supporting those banks that are promoting and financing mass destruction, mass genocide.
Thank you so much, Shamel. I really appreciate that. And we also have the websites here too. So be sure to follow them and see what's going on. Next, we'll have Concerned Citizens. How can we rally behind you?
Oh, my goodness. Right now, we are just starting to build capacity to actually have me full-time to work for Concerned Citizens. We've gotten our 501c3, so no more fiscal sponsor. So fundraising is a big deal for us. So right now, we are working with a grant writer to help us. We're applying for the big community change grant. But in the meantime, we're actually working also. We're Justice 40 Hub leaders. And we're also, I'm working with the CIRC, which is Deep South Center's, actually their TIC-TAC is called CIRC. So we're working with them to help build capacity so that I can actually do maybe a few things instead of all things. So that is a big issue, and actually getting grants money that'll actually hire a staff. and give us that is the most important thing, and it's the hardest thing to get, because people want to pay for anything but you to actually have the people actually make the program work. So me coming on in February, after we've been in existence since 2016, we've been really struggling in that way to actually make things move forward. So email us and let us know if you have any other people or anything that you need to know to actually help us to get funding. We are wide open and ready to receive. And we are building capacity. I'm doing all these trainings with CERC, with Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, and we're just working our way through. So anything that you can do to help, anything that you can make sure that people in your communities get out and vote. This state is under attack. And if you don't understand that what's going on in Louisiana can happen in any of your states at any time, you need to understand these people are, they are just, yeah, it's deep. They're like 5 steps ahead of us, at least in the worst ways possible. And this governor has come in and he has just cut everything that could help poor and working class people actually move forward in their lives. He's setting everyone back and putting petrochemical industries and you know, their platform ahead. So please vote, bring out the vote, join, follow us with Poor People's Campaign as well. Do watch parties on June 29th for the Poor People's Campaign, March on Washington for living wages, which is just $15 an hour for everybody. The working poor, we're struggling and we're getting more and more poor every day. So please check out, email us, send a message in our websites, and we appreciate anything you can do for us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Taylor. And it sounds like you all can use some volunteers. So volunteering can be virtual as well, y'all. So come on. Tap into the website and let's rally behind our grassroots leaders in these streets. Maria, go ahead.
Hi, we're currently need support in rallying behind pushing a petition. We're in partnership with our national partner, Center for Popular Democracy, where we have a petition that is demanding that President Biden declare a climate emergency under the National Emergencies Act. And we're demanding that in the petition, it says that the following steps need to be taken immediately. One is to declare a climate emergency where we shift off of fossil fuels and boost renewables. The second demand is phase out fossil fuels and revoke existing approved projects and phase out existing production. And the third is cut pollution by having stronger standards and holding polluters accountable. And we can get that link out to you. I did send it to you, Couture, but if you can get it to the attendees in the chat, thank you.
Oh, and everybody, what we'll do is, like I said, we'll be sending an email out to everybody with all of these links in our resource guide. So yeah, thank you so much, Maria. And now I'm gonna pass it to my co-lead in the Building Power node, Kareem Scales, and he's gonna close us out with a little bit more information about Cancer-Free Economy Network, and then we're gonna shift to our Q&A for those who can stay for it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Katura, and huge shout out to all of our amazing panelists, Ms. Shamil, Maria, and Tish. Your insights were greatly received and so needed. I think this conversation is extremely important, and we need to continue to support the efforts that you all are doing on the ground. And so with that, I just wanted to, before we close out, thank you all for joining for this rich conversation. I think today we planted a seed about ways that communities can create change. And as you hear how this has already taken shape in their communities in Louisiana. So thank you to Katura and the whole BP team. Want to give a huge shout out to Melissa, Ivana, everyone who played a role behind the scenes and helped put this together. Want to also give thanks to the Park Foundation for sponsoring this webinar series. And so before we transition to Q&A, I just want to give you all a few things as to what to look ahead to. Our next session will be held in the fall. We're going to take a little bit of time off for the summer and really strategize around, what information we want to share with you all next. So stay tuned for more information about our next session. And also, I want to invite you all to support CFE. We just to be transparent and vulnerable about where the organization is currently at this time. We're in a difficult time of transition as we are centering the voices of BIPOC leaders. We need your support to continue to do this work. And so if you are aware of any resources that you can direct our way, we would strongly encourage you to do that. And if you appreciated hearing from these amazing speakers and you want to hear more of this, we would ask you to consider donating to the Cancer Free Economy Network. Our website is cancerfreeeconomy.org. And we would definitely use your support as we continue to do this work. And so with that said, I will transition back, or actually, I can lead this next portion if you like. Just answer. Well, I think we got a couple questions in the chat if we could touch on really briefly. Not sure, Katrina, if you want me to lead that part or if you want to take the lead on that.
Yeah, you can. We can bounce off each other. It's okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So we got tons of people giving. Some of it I think is just feedback. So we have Dr. Junius Pressey, great session. Thank you. Shout out to the panelists. And then he also dropped a link about an event. There is going to be an equity online conference in July. So everybody should go ahead and check that out as well if you all can see that link. And maybe we can probably incorporate it in our resource guide. So that's great. Let's see. Someone else, a lot of people who live in St. James, or I don't know if it's St. James or St. John, they're referring to working the plants that are creating harm. What are the consequences of the working people would suffer as a result of the plants closing? Oh, that's a great question.
I got that.
You got it. All right. Come back on camera if you can.
All right. I'm not sure how many people if you live in the parish, you would understand how small it is when in comparison to the people along the river that actually there. So a little bit of a fact, Tulane Environmental Law Clinic did a study and found that St. John Parish is #1 in the United States for petrochemical industries, not hiring people in their community. I can tell you personally that my ex-husband works for DuPont and my cousin works for Dinka. So I do know people of color that actually are from the community that work there. But I'm going to give you an example that my dad always says. If Reserve, which is really where the worst of it goes, has 9,000 people there, and Dinka right now has 255 employees. The elementary school has a little over 400 students. Who should be sacrificed for these 255 people to have a job? Should we all die a long miserable life, so that these people can die? I think that the responsibility of the companies keeping their plant open and keeping their employees that's on them. And ultimately, these plants make billions of dollars. And if they make billions of dollars, if they would cut some money off the top to keep their employees, to keep the air clean for the community that it's in, as well as to keep their employees there, I think that that's a commitment that the petrochemical industry needs to make. That's not my responsibility as someone advocating for clean air, clean soil, and water for my family. I have a 2-year-old grandson who has exceeded his 70-year lifelong exposure to chloroprene in 2 years. He was born premature because that's what happens at Cancer Rally, and he is not speaking. He is right now being tested for autism. That is not something that everybody in this community needs to experience. I know too many people who are my generation, class of 1981, East St. John, state champions. My generations, our grandchildren are autistic. They're premature. this is not normal. So when I talk about advocating for environmental justice and against environmental racism, this is about saving lives, not about saving jobs. The job issue is with companies who hire them and how they manage to their funds and how they make their board of directors and their stakeholders happy. And that's what needs to be addressed when it comes down to job creation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tish. I think you hit it on the head that, that shouldn't be up for the people to have the pressure of making that decision. That's up to those at the top, in the petrochemical industry to do things in an appropriate manner. So I think you hit that right on the head. I got one quick question here in the chat from Maritza Alvarez, and she says she recently had the privilege of visiting the Humanation lands via WECR. I'm not for sure who that is, but they participated in a tour of Cancer Alley. She learned so much and identified the parallel realities of environmental racism and injustice that occur with BIPOC and poor working class folk. The question is, with Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples, they make it a practice to work collaboratively with First Nation. Do any of you or have any of you previously collaborated with First Nations peoples of those territories in this work? And so specifically speaking to, I believe, the indigenous community in that area, and if there's been any efforts to collaboratively work with them.
I was having trouble coming off of mute. I'm sorry. So we are trying to reach out to the Houma Nation in terms of air products. The land there was formerly Orange Grove Plantation, but it was previously owned by John Burnside, who was one of the largest slave owners in the nation. And the Houma Nation or the Houma tribe owned that land prior to the historical records are saying that the land was sold by the Houma Nation, but we know that most likely didn't happen because there's no record that of a sale. So we do believe that they were forced off of the land, but we are trying to make connections with them because we do believe, in addition to the graves of the enslaved on that property, that there are indigenous slave burials on that property as well. And so we're working with Healthy Golf, who has a connection to the Houma Nation, to see if we can pull them in to help stop air products from building. And then we have also worked with some indigenous populations in the Texas area. We strategize with them as well. I don't necessarily know the name of the tribe, but we do work with indigenous populations because we do know, just like we suffered, they did as well. And we're all in this together.
Thank you so much, Shamel. And I know
we've also met with it's 8 tribes in Houma, First Peoples Conservation Council. Dad and I traveled out and spoken with them extensively and offered our help. We have not made any collaborations at this time, but we have met with them a few times and talked about how, the idea that they can just come in and just take their land and kill them, which they've been doing historically.
Thank you so much, Tish, for that additional context. And I would encourage you, Maritza, if you're still on the call, to definitely connect with these organizations if there's an opportunity for you to make the connection. I think that's what these spaces are all about. Last question that we have for you all. I know we're right at time, but I think we can address this last question and then we'll wrap up from there. Can you all share or talk a little bit more about your experiences with raising funds and resources for this type of work? Any challenge, specifically successes or challenges in terms of fundraising?
Well, I can start with that because we're probably, we're new when it comes down to doing the fundraising. We actually had a fiscal sponsor briefly that actually was able to collect funds for us. But issues with that fiscal sponsor has caused us to, we just had to move on. So actually building capacity and asking for money for capacity only is not that easy to do. Volunteers have pretty much helped us throughout this whole advocacy campaign that we've had. The issues with volunteers, they come and go. There's so many other things that they're involved with that we can't say, stay. We just take what we can, and then we just kind of grab on to whoever we can. Right now, we need people for everything. We need somebody to help us with doing outreach. We have so many. I'm trying to do a community meeting right now, and it's been a challenge. We need someone who will help us to close out our grants that we're doing, because we have grants now that I'm actually trying to do the final statements and everything. And so it's just so many things that I'm trying to build capacity and learn while I'm doing it. But also ultimately, there's gonna have to be a line drawn where I need to hire somebody. We need to be able to hire someone who can act part-time or something that can actually do this, that we can keep. That's not just gonna come through for a minute and set up something and then just disappear. So that is a big issue for us. But we are applying for grants. We are so grateful for Beyond Petrochemicals. There's a few that have given us a large grant. Deep South Center has, we have a community monitoring grant with Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, and they've helped us a lot because that helps me to be hired. I wasn't working for the company, so I just started, like I said. So it's just a matter of how do we get people to actually understand that in order for us to work in this community, that we actually have to have a team to do it, and not just look at us to be everything for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely tough to have like that's what we really want, sustainability for the movement. So thank you for sharing, Tish. And yeah, we gotta get some volunteers. We gotta get back to that grassroots organizing, because it is hard, because it's hard to survive without being paid, and it's hard to do this work without money. So we gotta figure it out. So you all, thank you all so much. Ms. Tish, Shamel, Maria, thank you everyone from the CFE team, Ivana, Melissa, Kayla, Kareem, whoever else is on here. Thank you everyone else who's even joined us today. We really appreciate it, and we hope you all stay tuned for the next CFE webinar. Any final words, Kareem?
No, thank you, Katura, for your amazing facilitation skills today, and just echo your comments that we encourage you all to stay tuned and keep an eye out for future communication about other opportunities to help support this work, and our next webinar will be coming in the fall. So thank you all again, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.